Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video we're going to be working on our final participation activity in CIS195 Web Dev 1. And what are we doing here today? We're practicing web form elements. Now, we're not going to practice all of the web form elements, but we're going to practice a good chunk, a handful of them, that should give you the key experience that will give you some confidence as we wrap up the term. Now, this module, I can go here, this is okay, is going to be relatively low pressure, let's say. With this particular module, Web Form Basics, we don't actually have an assignment. It's the end of the term. So we're just going to do this participation activity worth 20 points, and we'll do that together. There is a quiz that you're going to take on these web form elements. And then that, my friends, is that. Then you'll work on the final exam later on. So yeah, let's go ahead and get to it. Now, if I go back to our participation activity, and there's some directions on here, and I'll refer to these directions as I'm working, as you're working, and things like that. Ultimately, we're creating a little mock form here, order form for a cafe, coffee shop, coffee kiosk, whatever the case may be. And it's got a little bit of styling. It's kind of nice. And there's a few things we'll do on here. But there's going to be a selection field. So the user is presented with a selection menu. Might call this a drop-down menu, but selection menu is a little bit more accurate. They get some check boxes to choose a topping. They get radio buttons to choose a pickup time. They're going to have an input range slider to choose the sweetness level. And then we have a text box for email. And we have a text area box for a comment. We have a text box for name. It is a little bit weird. We may rearrange some of this. It's kind of weird to have email up here for customer feedback and not down here, so we may end up repeating that. It's okay. Our goal is just to get some practice, not really to make the perfect order form. This does have some flaws in it and structure. And it looks like we're going to put a date field in as well. And then, of course, last but not least is a submit button. This one, the screen capture also shows a reset button. I don't do reset buttons anymore. Reset buttons on forms are very rare, so I'm probably going to nix that as an option. It is for sure dangerous to put a reset button so close to the submit button on your form, because if a customer accidentally clicks reset instead of submit, it's going to clear out their form. They may not be motivated to refill it out. So although we can create a reset button, I don't think we're going to do that. So we're just going to do a submit. Now, just before I turned on the recorder, I actually started my page, because I see in step one, we're setting up a page with the name of our coffee shop, and we're also creating a little fixed navigation. So here's my page as it is right now. I've got a fixed navigation up at the top, and I've got a heading 1, and I've got this main area where I'm going to be working. Now, what I do want to draw your attention to is I've got my navigation for my hyperlinks up here, and I did a hyper reference, and I used a hashtag and some ID. Haven't created these yet though. So hashtag order, custom, pickup, suite, feedback, mail, and submit. And that's going to be helpful because I want the user to be able to click on a menu item up in the nav bar, and I want the page to go to that particular section so that they can work on it. Now I've got a headline 1, heading 1, and then I've got my main section, and this is where my form and stuff is going to be. Now I'm not actually showing you my CSS for what I've done up here so far. You don't need it. It's just aesthetics changes. You know how to do this. I haven't done anything up here that you haven't done already. I did happen to use grid to arrange my nav menu items, but it wasn't essential. Nothing critical up there. Yeah, just some pretty colors and effects and things like that. I did leave my root selector, root rule open so that you could see that. I declared a couple variables just so I could put my colors in there, stuff like that. I'm going to do this too in here. Scroll behavior smooth. I should be able to demonstrate that today. And I think I saw that in the directions somewhere. Yeah, here we go. Scroll behavior smooth. Yeah, it should look pretty cool. We won't really notice it right now, but we're going to get it done. Okay, I think we're in good shape. I'm going to focus my attention down here on the main. Let me zoom in a hair. Now, I want to keep this neat and organized. Remember, this is not a very realistic order form, by the way. In real life, I think we would arrange this a little bit differently. Especially if we're ordering a drink, I think it's probably important to get a customer name and email address up front, and all that kind of stuff. But that's all right. Remember, our goal is just to practice form elements. Now, the other thing, this form is not going to be a functioning form. We're not sending this data to email or sending this data to a database for further processing. Those skills come up in other classes that you're going to take. We are just focused on this really rudimentary front end stuff. I do reference this website that has this free service so you can send your form data to email. I have not tested this one out. I've used something like this, services like these in the past, many years ago. But yeah, you could try it out if you want to, but it's not essential for what we are doing. All right, well, let's see. I've already got this top part created. There it is. There's the top part. I want to focus down here though. As I get to my first field, order your drink. Now in my main section, I'm going to create a set of form tags. I'm going to have one form on this web page, and I'm going to use one set of form tags to contain it. It's not too critical for us, but our opening form tag is definitely going to have the method attribute with post or get. I'll put post in here. And we're also going to have the action attribute. I'm not going to put anything in there. We also might use enc type, ENC type, encryption type. Now, we do have a PowerPoint, by the way, for this particular module where I go over explanations for these various parts. I definitely want you to study that PowerPoint because remember, we don't have a book chapter to review. So the PowerPoint's going to be your key, and you will see quiz questions related to this coming up. So it's important that you study. I'll give you the short answer now. The method attribute kind of controls how the data from the form is going to get sent. And the action is going to be the location of the script that's going to process the form data to do something with it. So it could very likely be a PHP script, something like that. So method and action, two critical attributes that go into the opening form tag, but not very important for us. Now, I think I'm going to end up using Flexbox for my form today. So my form is going to be my Flexbox parent. And then I need to have some children. Now the children I'm going to have in here are going to be field sets. How many do I want? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to do 7. So I'm going to write field set times 7. 7 field sets. Now a field set is what it sounds like. It's a block element, and it's used to contain a set of fields. I might not do 7 in real life. However, you could have one that's like, shipping information versus billing information, or name information versus product order information, stuff like that. And we're going to use this to kind of organize our sections. Now, in order for these field sets to work with my navigation menu, I should give them an ID. As an example, my first one is going to be ID equals order. So field set for the first one here, ID equals order. And then I'm going to have this field set. And let me hit some line spaces here so that way we don't get distracted. I'm just worried about this first one here. And in my field set, I think I will do a heading 2, and this is going to be order your drink. I'm just looking at the little screen capture here just to get ideas for what to type. So there's my heading 2. So I think what I will do, I'm going to go ahead and pause my recorder, and I'm going to put in heading 2s, headline 2s, and IDs and all of these other field sets. I'm back. Okay, yeah, so I've just put in some various IDs in here so we can see how this is working. Now we're starting to get to a level where we could actually start to test out our navigation menu and hopefully see that smooth scrolling. However, I need my page to be taller so that there's places where I can scroll. So let's see, I'm going to move up to my CSS, and of course my form is going to be a Flexbox container. Now in real life too, I would probably give this form a class, if not an ID and a class, because a website project may end up having multiple forms, and they will probably be styled and controlled quite differently. So since our demo page only has one form, it's not very important, and I can style it just with this form type selector. However, just for reality's sake, let's go ahead and put in ID equals order form. I'm going to write it in camel case. I don't typically do camel case for my HTML and CSS specifically, but a lot of web developers do. Camel case is essential to know if you're writing JavaScript. By coincidence, we will have to do a little bit of JavaScript today just for coolness factor. So, but this is camel case. We squish our words together. We start with a lowercase. Subsequent words have an uppercase letter. Camel case. If you write in all lowercase, which is what I typically do, that might be snake case, especially if we put an underscore in there. So order underscore form would be snake case. There's also Pascal case, which I don't remember exactly. I think Pascal case might just be every word is uppercase, including the O in order. But camel case, certainly very common. Okay, so now that my form has a unique ID, my styling, I can do something like this. I can do form hashtag order form, or I don't even need the form in front of that. I can just do hashtag order form. And I'm going to go ahead and do display flex, and I'm going to do flex direction column, and I'm going to do gap, I don't know, 10 pixels. It doesn't really make a huge change. I can see the gap working on there. By the way, these thin little borders that you see, those are the default borders on a field set element. Field sets by default have a border. And I didn't do it here. I don't think it was in the directions. It is in our PowerPoint. There's also the legend element. And the legend element can be used to label field sets. I don't know why I didn't do that here. I chose to use H2s, but in theory, we could do these as legends. And right after the opening field set, there we go. Now you can just kind of see how it changed it. So a legend by default is going to be just the normal font size, and the legend is usually superimposed over the top part of the field set border. I don't think I am going to do legends today, but again, I want you to know about those. Study that PowerPoint because you may see a quiz question on this. I'm going to stick with the H2s. So I'll just Control Z, I'll undo that. I'm back to heading 2. Now we could create a similar effect with our heading 2s, by the way. There's no rule that we can't. Maybe we'll try that here. So I want these field sets, though, to have some other characteristics that make them easier for me to get organized. I'm going to do hashtag order form space field set. I'm referring to the field sets within my order form just in case I had a different order form or a different form with its own field sets. And for these, I'm going to go ahead and do a min height of 400 pixels. I just want them to be taller in appearance. So now I can scroll through my page. And by the way, I should be able to like click on mailing list on my little nav menu. And look how it scrolls to where my mailing list is. And I can click on pickup time and it scrolls. Oh, I didn't quite see pickup time. Pickup time is right here. The issue I'm getting, what am I getting here? Let's see. Here's the issue I have. Because I did a fixed navigation menu, it's good that we're seeing this. Because I did a fixed navigation menu, it's going right to those particular field sets, but they're going underneath this. They're going underneath my nav menu. So that is a problem that is worth fixing. As a relatively quick and easy fix, I think I should be able to go to the body of my page, and I will give it some padding top. I think that might work. We'll find out. I'm going to do padding top, and I'll just pick 80 pixels to start off with. And let's pretend I'll click on order now. Oh, it's still not working. Yeah, it created a bunch of space for me here, so I'm still having that same issue. I can't remember if there's a way where I can offset the, there's a bookmark hyperlink, offset this element here. Let me give that some thought. Or, okay, since padding top didn't do what I was hoping it would do, got another idea. What if we went to our various field sets and I gave them a padding top of 100 pixels? Let's see if this does the trick. Oh, this might do the trick here. Order, there's order my drink, customize, there it is, now I can see it. So now I can see where those headings are. Oh, interesting. All right, and sweetness, okay, that works. I just don't need these to be quite so big. So instead of 100 pixels, I'll do 60. And I think I'm satisfied with that. Now, of course, I can't go to the bottom. The bottom is as scrolled up as it can be. I could put a bunch of padding, I guess, on the bottom of the page. So we'll do that. I'll go to my body, and I'll set padding bottom, and I'll do something big, like 200 pixels. And that might give me, oh, let's go bigger. 800 pixels, and this will kind of give me the same effect for all of them. Okay, that's not so bad. Now, I can't say I'm fond of how it's treating my borders, but remember the borders are only there, or I'm sorry, we're only having this issue because we can visualize the borders. Normally I set all borders to 0 and I don't display borders on the field sets, but I can certainly say border 0 and get rid of those borders, and then they're not even a question. I can just jump to all of the various fields that I want. And if I do like those borders, well, then what I would probably do is not make the field set the primary flexbox item. Instead, I might make a div as the flexbox item, and the div would have the ID and the padding and the margins and whatever I might want. And then the field set would just be a section within that thing. So it's basically the way I'm structuring is causing those issues, but I never intended to do borders anyway. While I'm here, I think I will also style my heading 2s. I guess I'll do that right up here. And let's see, I'm going to do a text align center, font weight normal, background color. I'm going to do my, what do I want? A secondary color, which means my foreground color needs to be something that I can see. My foreground color, variable, I guess my primary. Just kind of invert those. Yeah, that seems okay to me. Good enough. Not a focus for this particular demo, so we don't have to spend too much time on that. But we want this to look neat, and I want it to be organized so that way later on, if you're referencing some form elements, you can always come back to this page and look at the code you wrote. And I am using inline styles as well. For demo pages, I like to use embedded styles or internal styling. I'd like to use that for demo pages, so that way all of your references are all self-contained into one file. Not the most professional way to go, but certainly good enough for quick practices and demos and stuff like that. Let's go ahead and make our selection menu. So order our drink is supposed to be a selection menu. And if I look at the directions, do I even get the example in here? No, I don't know what they're supposed to be. Do I tell you up here in the directions? Use a select drop down for drink choices. Example, well, you can just make up some. We'll do a few here. And include option groups for categories like hot drinks, cold drinks, and stuff like that. Okay. So let's go ahead and do a selection menu. Look at our page here. I need to be on the right one. Order your drink. This is going to be easy. We do a select, and I'm going to give this select a name. Name equals, I'll just call it drink order. Doesn't really matter. The name is something we do want to get in the habit of using, the name attribute, although it doesn't really have much impact on our non-functioning web forms. On a functioning web form, the name attribute is a lot more valuable, and it's used when it's sending data pairs to your server-side script. So I've got a name in there, and there's an opening and closing select tag. So I'm just kind of looking at this customize your drink. I'm sorry, order your drink. Oh, in fact, it's already got something. It's already started to make something. But what are we going to see in here? This is where we're going to see the values. And our values are going to be as part of options. So we can just have whatever text in here within option tags. Let me make this a little bit wider. And now we'll start to get some options. Now the first option, I always like it to be something relatively generic. Something like choose your drink. And then I'll have a few other options on here. Espresso, latte. I have no idea how to spell cappuccino. Cappuccino. Good enough. So now my drop-down menu is going to give me these choices. I like to start my first one as a generic, as a default, so that way if a customer forgets to choose, it's not going to automatically send them an espresso or whatever. So we could have JavaScript look at our form when a user submits, and if they are trying to submit this top option, we can display an error message and break the form. Say, hey, don't forget to choose your drink. Now, we should also have values in here as well. Value equals null for the first one. Value equals espresso. Value equals latte. And last but not least, value equals cap. Now, the customers don't see this. In fact, I'll just shorten them all. This is the data that would be sent to the server-side script. Drink order equals ESP. Drink order equals LAT. And this lets the database know what drink has been ordered. And of course, it can have it display in a much nicer way, but this is just the data that's going to be sent. So we have a name on our selection menu, and then of course we have our values on our options. Now this is pretty tiny up here, so I'm going to do a little bit of styling. I want to make that font nice and big. So I'll just head up to my styling, and I'll go ahead and say select font size 1.2 ems. Is that going to be too big? No, I don't think that's too big. That doesn't look so bad. But I will go ahead and do this. How about a little bit of a margin, 8 pixels. There we go, a little bit of spacing around that. And now we've got, we've got our choices that we can easily select. Now there is a way you can allow a customer to choose multiple things from a selection menu by using the multiple attribute, but that is not a real good thing to do. The user would have to hold down their control key and select multiple things up here. You can also rig these, I think, with size, the size attribute, so that you can show several items at once. Also not a very common practical thing to do. This is the most typical way. We just display one item at a time, and in its raw form, by default, it's going to show the first item. The customer has to choose the selection menu and choose the option that they want. A radio button is another good way to go. But if there were going to be lots of choices, like let's say 5, 6, 7, or 8 choices, selection menu is nice because it doesn't take up as much screen real estate. Whereas radio buttons, you're going to see them all listed out. Okay, we're doing pretty good here. Now I think in the directions I mentioned hot drinks and cold drinks. So we could do this. We can break up our options with opt group. So opt group, and then it's like label equals, and we'll say hot drinks. Now let's see. I want my opt group to be after my default. I'm going to turn off word wrapping. And I want the closing opt group tag to be down here. And I'm going to indent these so it's a little bit clearer that our opt group contains these options. And so now we'll get this label, hot drinks, and we can still choose. Now you can't choose hot drinks, but now it kind of makes it a nicely more formatted structure. And if I repeated or had another opt group with options, you would see those appear as well. I don't think we need to get the point across, but that can be nice for organizing much larger sets of options in a selection menu. And I'm going to make that font size a little bit bigger just so it's really easy to see. I'm going to do that. Margin 8 pixels. Let's go and do padding 8 pixels as well. So everything's just nice and big and nice and easy to see. And of course, we can change colors, and you can change borders and fonts and stuff like that. But I think that's pretty good. And I think it's fair to say that we have created our selection menu. Let's move down here to our checkboxes. Another section, customize your drink. Okay, so here's customize your drink. And you know what? I did not put a label on there. Oops. Okay, we're not done yet. Let's go back. Let's go back to my select menu. And let's do a label for, and I'm going to put in drink order. And what is it supposed to say? Choose a drink, colon. So this is the label. Now, in order for my label to be properly connected to my form input control, I need to give it an ID, which is the same as the for attribute in the label. So this is going to be drink order. Okay, it's okay that my ID and my name are the same. What does that do for me? Well, now, in order to activate this selection menu, I can click on the label, choose a drink. And you probably didn't notice that, but when I click the label for choose a drink, my form control becomes active. That selection menu becomes active. And then I think I can use my down arrows. Yeah, I can use my up and down arrow keys to cycle through those various options. And if I wanted a latte, I would just press enter or tab here. Tab like I'm moving on to the next form field. So this gives our form a little bit of accessibility. So we are going to be using labels multiple times, but let's go ahead and style it so that way the next time around when we use our labels, we can, labels are going to have, actually I'm probably going to do a lot of similar stuff. Font size 1.5 ems. Yeah, I guess that's good enough. And let's do a font style italic, just so we can see that those are different than the other things. Okay, I think we're in good shape. So there's our order our drink. Now, next on the agenda is going to be some check boxes, toppings. Okay, so that's what we're going to create. So I'm going to head down to that section of our form. I'm going to do a label for toppings. I haven't created that yet, but that's all right. And we're just going to have toppings. And there's a colon on there. I can just see that. Now with, actually, yeah, I'm still good with this. When it comes to check boxes and radio buttons for that matter, we're actually going to be using multiple labels, and we're going to put the label after the various checkboxes. So there's one label for all of them. And then let's go ahead and do this. Input type equals checkbox. That creates a little checkbox. In fact, I'm just going to leave it like that. It's incomplete. I'm missing some stuff, but I just want you to see this. And then after the checkbox, I'll put another label in for equals. Now this first one's going to be whipped cream. I'm just going to go ahead and put in whip. And the actual text that people will see is going to be in between the opening and closing label tags. And that will be whipped. Makes me think of Stewie from Family Guy. Whipped. Cream. There we go. And so there's a basic checkbox and a label. And you'll see it kind of working for us there. Now, for my first label, I'm going to put a break tag after that. Actually, I'll do a couple break tags. Just kind of push that down. Now you can see I've got this checkbox in front of whipped cream. I'm going to make sure my checkbox also has the ID equals whip. So what this allows me to do, now that there's a connection between my label and my checkbox, I can click on the word whipped cream to check that box, or I can click it again to uncheck the box. So it really improves our usability and accessibility if the user can literally click on the word in question, the label, in order to activate or deactivate that particular checkbox control. My checkbox is pretty tiny, so I'm going to head up to my selection menu. Oh, we haven't done this one yet, I don't believe. Attribute selector. So input square bracket type equals checkbox. And I'm going to do transform scale 1.5. Make that checkbox a little bit bigger. Yeah, not so bad. I want there to be a little bit more space after it though. Let's see, I'm styling the checkbox, so let's go ahead and do, can I do padding here? Padding right, I don't know, 8 pixels? No, that didn't work. How about margin right? There we go, that gave it the space that I wanted. Yeah. Actually, I'm gonna do margin. And let's do top, right, bottom, left. Yeah, let's do 2 pixels. There we go. All right, so there's our checkbox for whipped cream. Now that we can see how that's structured, it's going to be easy to copy and paste. You know, something else I'm going to do here for my various checkboxes, I'm going to give them the same name. Putting a name on your checkboxes is good. It's incredibly important for radio buttons, but it's also good for checkboxes. And it's okay that they share the same name. So I can do something like name equals, I'll just write top so that way it fits on my my narrow display here. Go a little bit wider. Just so we can see that. Okay, so now that we've got one of those, I'm going to go ahead and copy, paste, paste, whipped cream, caramel, drizzle, and I don't know, what other toppings go on a coffee? Oh, extra shot. I don't know if that's a topping, but what the hell. Actually, I'll do chocolate drizzle. That sounds a little bit more logical. Chocolate drizzle. And I'll change the labels here. What do we got? Caramel. Chalk. Got to change the IDs too. Chalk. Cara. And that should be good enough. Now, this gives us some insight into our form controls, right? Apparently, labels and inputs are inline elements. And we know that because they're all appearing in a line. There could be some things we might do with our CSS to help organize this a little bit better. We could put these in their own little containers. We could rig it so that our labels are like block elements, but going to the right. You can do a bunch of different things. However, the break tags seem to work. I could just put a break tag after each of these, and maybe I want a couple of break tags. So I'll just put a couple of break tags after my labels, and that's going to give me a nice little line. Now with checkboxes, it is designed so that the customer can select multiple checkboxes or none at all. So it's possible for me to have whipped cream, caramel drizzle, and chocolate drizzle. Perfectly fair. If you only want the customer to pick one of those toppings, then you shouldn't use checkboxes. You should use radio buttons. Let's go ahead and do that. In fact, I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I don't want you to cheat though. I'm not going to cheat. Let's go to our pickup times. Let's do radio buttons. Let's see. Label for equals, it doesn't really matter what I put here because there's not going to be an input connected to it. I should probably just be using an H3 to be honest with you. But I'm doing a label. H3 would make a lot more sense though. What is the demo have us do? Pickup, oh no, we already have pickup time. Oh, we don't even need a label here. At least no mass label. Instead, we're going to do input type equals radio button, name equals time, and let's see, let's do a for equals, I'll just say time 1. There's the input. I'm going to follow that up with a label, for equals time 1. My input actually should be ID, not for. Excuse me. Office hours are starting up. I've got my Teams open off to the side though. So label, the for attribute goes with the label, ID goes with the input control, and then what is this going to be? ASAP right now. Okay, great. And then we have a couple of break tags after this. Let's see, now these are input type radio. Let's go ahead and have a few of them on here so that we can see how that's going to look. And then we've got 15 minutes or 30 minutes. 15 minutes, I know these are not practical times. Probably a time of day. Selection menu could be a good one to go with. And let's see, this is going to be time 3, time 2, time 3, time 3, time 2. Just getting these things matched up. I want them to share the same name. Radio buttons in the same set should share the same name, but they will have different IDs. You know, the other thing I'm leaving out is value. So in real life, doesn't really affect us here. In real life, I should be doing value equals time 1. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Paste and paste, and this will be time 3 and time 2. I really should have had values on my inputs for these checkboxes as well. Again, it doesn't affect us in our demo, but it's just good practice, right? So I'll go ahead and put some values in here, and let's see, we have values chalk value cara, that's good enough. And let's check out our radio buttons. There they are. So there's our radio buttons for our pickup time. Now the labels are already big, but not my radio buttons themselves. Notice when I go to select radio buttons, if I select one radio button item, any other one that I had selected is deselected. That's important. That's the way it should work. If you want the user to be able to select multiple radio buttons, don't use a radio button. That's what checkboxes are for. Checkboxes are designed to let the visitor choose multiples. Radio buttons are designed to let the user only choose one of the set. So I can head up to my CSS though, and I can do the same styling for this checkbox for the radio buttons. I'll just repeat this: input type equals radio. There we go. So now my radio buttons are going to be kind of large as well. All right. And if I reset, there we go. There is a selected, right? Yeah, selected attribute you can put in. So I could go to my radio buttons, for instance, and by default on my form, none of the radio button items are selected, which is probably fine. However, I could go to the input type radio, the first one I mean, and I think I can just write selected on there. Oh, you know what? I'm supposed to write checked. It's been a while since I've done this one. Yeah, not selected, checked. I know, even though it's a radio button, you do checked. So if you put checked on there, it's automatically been selected. So the customer can still choose something different and go back to the original, but this ensures that there is something selected by default. And you can do the same thing with checkboxes as well. Of course, with checkboxes, you can put checked in several things. Not as practical for this kind of topping, but yeah, you could have checked for the whipped cream to go ahead and check that by default. I'm not going to do that though. All right, we're doing great here. We're really coming along well. And yeah, we're probably at least halfway, or getting close to the halfway mark. How are we doing on time here? Doing good. I'm trying to kind of limit this to what our class would be if we were doing an in-person class, and I think we're doing pretty well here. Set your sweetness with a range slider. Okay, let's give it a shot here. So let's go to our code and set your sweetness. I'm going to do a label first. Label 4 equals, what am I supposed to say? Sugar level TSP, parentheses. Oh, I'm actually writing the label text there. So hold on, I'm going to take all of this and move that out. My 4 is just going to be sugar. There we go. And the text I want the person to see is going to be this one. Now, the range slider is pretty cool, but in order to display output right on the screen that the visitor can see with their selection, we need a little wee bit of JavaScript. And for this one, we're going to have our output display next to this that's going to change. So for instance, I'm not going to do a break tag here, but I will do colons after that parentheses. And then just beneath this, I'm going to do a span ID equals sugar output. That's spelled properly. There we go. And in our screen capture here, we're going to default with a 2. All right, we're going to start with 2. So a person can reduce the sugar or increase the sugar, but we're going to start them off with a level 2. So I'm going to write a 2 right up there. Okay, we're going to come back to this. Now we need the actual input control. Input type equals range. So this creates the range slider. And if I look at my web page, there it is right there. There's a little range slider. I can click and drag this. Okay? And it's a pretty smooth transition. Now there's a few attributes that we can put along with our input type range. We can do a step of 1. This means it's going to increase by 1s, 1 teaspoon at a time. You could put 2 if you did 2 teaspoons at a time. That's not really practical here, but yeah, we'll do a step of 1. And we'll do a min of 0 and a max of 8. You can have 8 teaspoons of sweetness, of sugar, I guess. Okay, now you don't really see those affecting us here. Again, the slider is working, and you may not be noticing this so much, but I can actually see it's not a smooth transition with my range slider anymore. It actually stops at these various steps. In fact, I'm going to change it to a max of 6. So that way the steps are a little bit bigger. And so now when it's kind of clicking to those various breakpoints. Okay, it's not so bad. For one, let's go ahead and make this thing a little bit larger. Let's see, let's put our input control beneath. Get plenty of room there. That looks pretty good. And let's get our sugar output looking good. So I'm going to head up to the CSS. Hashtag sugar output. And I'm going to do a font size of 2Ms. And that'll be nice and big. And I'm going to do color var accent 1. So that kind of stands out a little bit. So that's a nice big number. And font weight bold. That's what I want. I want bold. And while we're here, let's increase the scale of this. Now, well, yeah, let's see what happens if we just add input type equals range. Yeah, so this one works pretty well, but with range sliders, it's might need a little bit more left margin. It's bigger for sure, but it's not over as much as I want. So I am going to give my input square bracket type equals range some of its own styling. It needs more margin left. Margin left, how about 80 pixels, just so we've got something. There we go. So now we can really see where that is. All right, we're doing great. Now in the directions, somewhere in here, I remember seeing it before. I do show you some JavaScript on here. Okay. Now, in fact, let me just go ahead and put this into inline JavaScript. Actually, let me go ahead and copy this over to our input on here so that way it's easier to see and I can just go ahead and start talking about it. And this is going to go right into my input tag. And I'm putting it on a separate line, but it's within my input tag for document range there. Okay. So on input, we're going to take our document, our web page, and we're going to look for an element that has the ID. Now I've got sugar value in here from the directions, but I called mine sugar output. So I'm going to change this to sugar output. There we go. So in my web page, let's start from the very left. So on input, basically whenever I change this field, and actually you can already see it starting to do its thing up there. So now on input, whenever I change this field, this range slider from something to something else, it's going to invoke this little script here. So on my web page, there's an element with an ID called sugar output. And there it is right up there, sugar output. Oops. Now text content is a property of sugar output. Text content's a good one. I often do inner HTML. That one should still work. Yeah, that's good too. Yeah, let's change that back to text content. That's fine. Okay, so we're finding the element sugar output, which is that little span up there. There it is. Let me put this all over here so it's a little easier to look at. Okay, so there's my sugar. So there's the inner HTML or the text content for that sugar output. And what are we going to apply? What value are we going to give it? We're going to get the value of this element being the input range slider. And then we get what we've got here. So let's see. I do want to point out a couple things. Since I am starting off at a number 2, I do want to add a value attribute to my input range with 2 on it. Right now you can see by default my slider is in the middle, but that's not where it should be because I've got a 2 out of a possible 6 or something. So I can also put in value equals 2. Now you can see, the range slider is a little bit to the left of center. I can go down to 1 or 0, or I can go up all the way to the max of 6. But there's my range slider with just a little bit of inline JavaScript so that we can see that output happen right there on the screen. Okay, let's move on. There's our range slider. What else have we got? We need a, let's look down here. Let's do a couple things. Customer feedback. Let's put a couple of text fields here. So I'm going to put in input type, and let's do label first. With text boxes, we do the label first. With radio buttons and checkboxes, we do the label second. Checkbox first. But we'll do label for equals, I'll just say fname for first name. And this will be first name, colon. And then for the let's do a break tag right there. Input type equals text. Text is actually probably the most common form element. And if you don't do a type on an input, it defaults to a text box. But type equals text, I think, is sufficient. And, we will do a placeholder. Placeholder equals, I'll just say name here. All right, and there's our input, and we'll do a couple of break tags. Now, I also want to do a label for, let's say, email address. Label for equals email, closing label, and I don't know why it gave me another closing label tag. Let's make sure we don't need that. But now we can do input type equals email. So type equals email, type equals tell, type equals URL. These are specialized text fields, which on a mobile device will give us a email friendly keyboard versus a telephone number keyboard versus a web address URL friendly keyboard. And for placeholder, I'll write user@domain.com, something like that. That's pretty good. And that's going to give us a couple of fields there so we can kind of see how those are looking. Let's put a break tag on this one. Now, obviously, these fields could be bigger, so I can just head up to my styling. And I don't want to do scale here. I just want to do like font size. Ooh, I forgot I've got a meeting coming up in a minute that I want to attend. Okay. So I might be pausing this video earlier, but I think we're doing pretty good. Let's see. So I think I'm going to just do this right up here. Labels, input, type equals text. And I'm going to copy this. Comma, paste, comma, paste. Let's do another one. Comma, paste. I want to do type text, type tell, type URL, type email. Yeah, and I want those all to be nice and big. And then you can put text in and the placeholder goes away. There's a few other values or attributes we can put in there, like min length and max length, so that we can limit how many characters a user can type. But yeah, we're doing pretty good. There's also fields like required we can put in there. So, or I'm sorry, attributes like required. So for instance, on this, for the email, we could just put an attribute in here, required, which means the form can't be submitted unless the user fills out this email address. So that's pretty good sometimes. Yeah, so just required right in there. And I put mine second. It could be anywhere. Anywhere in that input tag is perfectly fine. Okay? And then I think we also want, this is the feedback area, right? So let's also do a text area also within this field set. And text area is also going to get a label. For equals, I'll just say message, colon, and then we'll do a break tag. There should be a couple break tags after this. And then for the text area, it's kind of weird. You actually use a text area tag. ID equals message to match up with my labels, or match up with my for. I didn't put an ID in my inputs here. I'm going a little bit fast and skipping some things. But for my email and my first name, I would also have ID attributes in those inputs to match up with the for attributes. So I know I'm rushing here, but those are still important things to have. And there I've got my opening and closing text area. Now we typically don't put stuff in between the opening and closing text area because whatever you put in there is actually going to show up in that text area box. But it does look like it would be helpful to give it some size and structure. Now you can actually use a couple of attributes. I think it's rows and calls to give this more width and height. But you know, let's just use the techniques we know with CSS. So for instance, I can go to here and control my font size and italics and stuff like that. So I can go ahead and just say text area is also going to have this large font size, but then I might want to do some things unique to text area. Text area, maybe I want its width to be 60% of the device width, and I want its min height to be something like 200 pixels. That might be too big, but that's not so bad. And now we could just, the user can type. Notice I've got italics in there. That's fine. That's just because I've got my font style italics set for that. If I don't like that, font style, I can't remember, is it none? Nope. Is it default? Nope. Is it inherit? Yeah, looks good. Font style inherit to get rid of that italicizing. And of course I could do stuff like padding of 8 pixels, give some spacing in there. So it just looks a little bit easier to read. And I think I can set line height too. Line height, I don't know, let's do 1.5, see how that looks. Okay, so far so good. Yeah, a little better line height. Yeah, so you can type the message. Again, we can control the maximum number of characters. Now for something like this, I might use JavaScript to control the maximum number of characters. You know, you'd make it a big number so the person can type a message, but there you go. So text area for typing a lot more text. Now, I'm actually going to skip over join our mailing list, but I want you to have it on there. Okay, so even though I'm not going to show you this, I want you to do this, and I'll give you a hint. For the name, just do another input type text. For the birthday, I want you to do input type date and see what happens. Input type date. I'm going to run right down here to the last one. Input type equals submit. Value equals send your order. So input type submit is literally going to create a submit button, which I would style with CSS in a similar way that I styled my other elements here. Now you can use type equals submit, you can use type equals button. Type equals submit though is an official submit button for this one form that we've created. Now you can also do type equals reset, but I already mentioned it's not good to use reset. I wish I didn't even have that in the screen capture there. So don't do a type equals reset, but type equals submit is how you do it. So a person would fill out the form with all the stuff they wanted to have, and then they would send the order. Now, it went back to my email because remember I put required on that email field. So it knows that I didn't fill it out, so it went back there. So that's what's happening. But there you go. Let's see, a couple things that I wish I showed you in the last couple minutes, which I didn't. One thing that I think is pretty cool, for instance, with styling, we can do a focus pseudo class. So for instance, I could do something like input : focus, and I'll do a background color of FF4 for bright yellow. So now notice when I click on a form field, well, it didn't work here because it's not an input, so I'd have to do similar things to those. And those aren't happening because those don't get the yellow. But definitely on my, I thought it would work on this. Oh, because selection is not input, it's select. But on my text boxes, you can see that, yeah, when I focus, when I activate them, they do change to yellow. So that's kind of useful. And therefore, if I were to submit this, notice it automatically activated my required field, and I can see that focused in as yellow right there. Not necessarily the only way I would do something like that. That's more of error correction, but or content validation, but same kind of concept. So that's just with input focus. And with that, I'm going to bid you a fond farewell. But yeah, so go ahead and finish this up. And obviously there's just a couple extra things I want you to take care of with the join your mailing list part. Go ahead and publish this, test it out online, and then in our participation activity, submit your URL to your form demo page to me. And that is our participation activity for Module 9 Web Form Basics. Take care.